And today it's a bit different. Normally in those streams I build something, like we built an AI agent, we built a RAG system, we built a bunch of stuff, or we explore some technologies. And today I actually just want to talk about some things that happened over the last days or weeks. And of course, the idea is to have kind of a chat. So if you got anything, any questions, any thoughts, any ideas, or anything I should talk about, definitely let me know. And of course, also because it's something that sometimes gets asked for, all my streams do get uploaded to YouTube on this Maximilian extended channel. So if you need to leave early, or if you missed one of my past streams, if you want to see the stream where I build a RAG system, for example, you can. It's right here. Whoops, that's a weird color. It's right here on this channel, so you can watch it there, and all those other streams as well. So, hi everyone, hi Parsa, hi everybody else, thanks for joining. I will start with Remix, or in general. Of course, there's lots of stuff happening all the time, especially if we talk about AI, which I also probably will later. A new model is coming out every day. And I will dive into all those questions you're posting, Wolfgang, so I will not skip them, no worries. But we also had some news in the classic software development era. It's not all about AI. There are some things going on in relation to frameworks, libraries, and so on. And for example, there is Remix. And in case you don't know, Remix is a React framework, a full stack React framework, essentially an alternative to Next.js, you could say, just like 10-stack Start also is. And Remix, I think it was launched like 4 years ago, I'm not sure. It's a couple of years ago, actually. And a couple of months ago, it actually was merged into React Router. So maybe we start with that briefly. Here on the Remix blog, they have an article where they essentially mention here with the release of React Router version 7, which was last year in November, that they merged Remix, this full stack framework, into React Router. And that's why now, if you're using React Router, you can either use it in the data mode or declarative mode. They used to call it library mode. So essentially you can use it as a library, as you always did. You can build single page React applications with Vite and add React Router, but you can now also use it in framework mode, and that is essentially Remix. So that's essentially what previously was distributed as a standalone framework called Remix. So that's that. Now, the question therefore was, what's going to happen to the Remix brand? Because since that framework was merged into React Router, what's happening with what was previously called Remix? By the way, as a side note, maybe some of you also noticed, one problem with this approach of merging Remix into React Router is, of course, that if you're trying to use large language models to help you with coding, they don't know about that, typically. So you have to tell them, you have to point them at the right docs, and chances are high that they will give you incorrect code, because they either give you Remix code that doesn't work just like that in React Router apps, or they give you React Router code that uses the library mode and not the framework mode. That will probably get better over time, and you can, of course, provide some extra context to fix that, but that is one problem. But back to Remix version 3, which is not out yet. The latest version is Remix version 2, and that is what was merged into React Router. And there is this blog post, Wake Up Remix, which was published a few days ago by the React Router team, the Remix team, essentially. It's more than just these two guys, as far as I know, but they're like the founders or the initial creators of Remix and of React Router, and yeah. So they posted this blog post here where they share their vision for Remix, the framework, and its future. And I will not read this blog post in its entirety here. Definitely feel free to do so if you want to. I will try to summarize it. What they're essentially saying here is that, of course, React Router is really good. Obviously, they created it, but it's also really good. That's their point, essentially, because now that Remix was merged into it, you can use React Router as an alternative to Next.js, for example, to build full stack applications if you want to, as mentioned, or you use it in library mode as you always did in single page applications, for example. You got that flexibility now. And they also mention it here that React Router now also supports React Server components when using it in framework mode. Though, to be fair, that is in preview mode. I had some problems getting those examples to run, those React Server Components examples, but we're getting there. And ultimately, the idea is that you can build React applications with React Router in framework mode and use React Server Components to render React markup, JSX markup on the server, and then have it transition to the client, have it be transferred to the client, and have all the benefits you can potentially get from React Server Components. And of course, it is nice that it's no longer just Next.js that supports React Server Components, but that we at least have that preview version of React Router. Actually, the question by Wolfgang here really fits perfectly. Are server components and server actions in React get adopted, or does the community hate this new stuff? Well, that is a perfect question. The big problem with React server components and server actions, and these two are kind of related, is really that it's been a long time since React Server Components were first announced. Let's see if I can find the original blog post. So React Server Components were first announced by the React team in December 2020. So that's a long time ago, obviously. And back then, they sounded that it made a lot of sense to have React Server Components, at least to me, and I guess to quite a lot of people, because the problem that React Server Components try to solve is a real problem, that you have some content, some data that needs to be fetched, that you might want to fetch on the server. You might want to build a full stack React application with React. You might not always want a decoupled front end and back end API. So having an integrated solution kind of makes sense. Rendering that markup on the server kind of makes sense. And then having a single page application like experience on the client where pre-rendered markup from the server is magically fetched whenever something changes. All that makes sense. The problem just is that React Server Components and the technology behind them, and it's kind of similar for server actions, is so complex that you can't just create a React application and start using React Server Components. If you create a React application with Vite, right? If you use Vite, which is the de facto standard nowadays for creating front-end web applications, single-page applications, if you use Vite to create a React application, you can't use React Server Components in that application just like that. You might be able to get it to work, but it's definitely complex. You will need to dive into the internals of Vite. You will need to adjust the bundler configuration, and it's really not a lot of fun. It's not really easy to do. So therefore, for a very long time, Next.js was essentially the only framework that supports React Server Components. And therefore, to get back to that question, I don't think React Server Components and server actions are well adopted in the React community. They definitely are in the Next.js community, I would argue, and that is a big community. That is a decent chunk of the overall React community, but they're not necessarily well adopted in the overall React community. And I guess we can... there is this nice site, 10stack Trends, which is like a better version of NPM Trends. If we go there and we search for React Router, the usage of this React Router package, And we then add some other packages here. Let's say we add Next.js, or the Next framework. If we do that and we change this to 5 years, we can see that the Next.js growth has been very nice, but more people are using React Router than Next.js. And if you're using Next.js, you're not using React Router. So it's kind of the addition of these two numbers that defines the overall amount of React projects that use some form of routing. Now, of course, there also are probably plenty of React projects that don't use React Router and that don't use Next.js. But by having more React Router usage than Next.js usage, that kind of makes it pretty clear that there are lots of React apps out there that are not using Next.js and that are therefore not using React Server Components. And React Router supporting React Server Components doesn't really change this because, one, it's in preview mode, so it's not really production ready. It's pretty hard to use it, or maybe not hard to use it, but it's definitely not stable yet. And many React Router applications are probably single-page applications that are not using the React Router framework mode, because don't forget, this new mode was only introduced in November 2024, so a couple of months ago, half a year ago. So roughly around here, right? So that was when the framework mode was announced. So yeah, it has grown a bit since then, but so has Next.js. So the majority of these React Router apps are probably not using framework mode. So long story short, React Server Components and Server Actions in theory are amazing, and they are pretty good in Next.js. There, they work pretty well. You can use them there. They solve real problems. But the overall React community, I would say, has not really adopted React Server Components in the sense of using it everywhere, because you can't use it everywhere. Very long response, but I hope it makes sense. Now back to Remix here. Remix is a framework that now is not needed anymore because it has been merged into React Router. So what the Remix team decided to do is they wanted to enter a new path. So they wanted to enter a new path that actually doesn't rely on React anymore. And that's a pretty big announcement. Now, actually, that not rely on React anymore part has been made even clearer in a different post that they didn't actually publish. Let me see if I can find it. Declaration, yeah. This one here. So that is a post that has never been published. This is essentially the raw markdown file, and this is not in the Remix repository. Instead, this is a fork of the Remix website repository, which includes their blog. So their blog posts are essentially markdown files in that repository, in the original repository, not in this forked one. But they accidentally pushed a blog post that shouldn't get published to that repository. And when that repository then was forked, so was this unpublished blog post. And this blog post, which they never published, had the name Remix Declaration of Independence. Now, to be very clear here, they were not happy about this being published. They distanced kind of themselves from that post, and they didn't really like people refer to that blog post. So now that I'm referring to it here, they will probably not like me for it, but it's important for the overall story. I just want to make it very clear that this is not the official published take. But the title alone of this initial draft of this blog post. So this is kind of the draft of this blog post here, right? So that is the officially published one. That's the final version, you could say. This here was the raw draft version. And in there, they had some text that is similar to the final version, but the title alone makes it very clear that they want to move away from React. And in here, they describe that one main reason for that is the complexity of React. And that is kind of true. React got more and more complex over all those past years. So Wolfgang, as you wrote here, server components are more complicated and expensive, in my opinion, to deploy. So that is one thing, but the complexity overall increased. Like, as I mentioned before, running or using React server components in your React application is not possible unless you're using Next.js or some other framework or environment that is pre-configured to support them. So it's not trivial to use React server components. But it's not just that. Over all those years, we got suspense, which is also not super easy to use in all possible ways. If you want to use suspense for data fetching, that requires a project that is configured to support it, or a framework or a library that supports it, to be precise. We got a bunch of hooks nowadays. React got more complex. The initial idea of React was to have a declarative way of describing the UI, change some state, and have UI updates. And that still works, and you can still use React for just that if you want to. But of course, because our websites got more complex, React also got more complex. And that's essentially what the Remix team also kind of described here in this initial draft version of their blog post. And what they also mention in this post, which is why I find this post really interesting, is that one problem they faced, or they're facing, with React Router and with Remix is that they have their own ideas for how to solve certain problems. And the React team then sometimes has different ideas for solving the same problems. Now, some problems are problems that are only solved by React Router, but some problems are solved by both, especially when it comes to data fetching and doing that in a performant way and so on. Because data fetching is something React cares about, but React Router also cares about because you often need to fetch data when you switch routes. So what happened in the past is that the React Router team comes up with a solution, and then the React team comes up with a different solution for the same problem. And therefore, the React Router and the Remix team, which is the same team essentially, or the same founders, they now had to decide, do they stick to their solution or do they support the official React solution, even if they prefer their own solution maybe, or do they support both? If you support both, the problem of course is that now you got unnecessary complexity in your framework, right? If Remix has two solutions for one problem, it's not clear to the people, to the developers that use Remix, which solution they should choose. If they only have their own solution, people wonder, why can't I use the React solution? If they're not supporting React server components, which they for a very long time didn't, people ask, hey, why are you not supporting React server components? It's the official server-side rendering thing, so to say. If they only support that, then they might support something which they personally feel like is not perfect. Maybe they get a better idea for fetching data on the server and pre-rendering pages and so on. So that's kind of the dilemma they found themselves in. And that's why they declared the independence of Remix from React. And the idea, and that's in the final post as well, is to use Preact. In case you don't know, but you probably do, but Preact is essentially a slimmed down, simpler version of React that also brings some extra features, which doesn't really make sense if we call it slimmed down, but it's super small. It has many of the features React offers, but it also has some additional features, and some things are missing in Preact. Now, to be very honest, I haven't worked a lot with Preact in the last years. I can't even tell what's in Preact right now and what isn't, but that has been the pitch of Preact, so to say. I always kind of wondered why Preact isn't more popular, given the fact that it is so small and has many of the same features, but it is what it is. The Remix team now, however, decided to fork Preact. So they're not using Preact in the way Remix or React Router used React. They're not using it as a dependency. Instead, they're forking it. So they're building their own version of Preact, using the current version of it as a foundation. That's what they're doing. And they then want to build a brand new framework on top of this Preact core. And that should be a framework that follows certain principles. And that's now the actual meat of this post, you could say, or that's the core information we have about this new framework. Because there isn't too much information out there. There is no version you could use yet. There are just some ideas, just some principles here. And then we got this first principle here, which is really interesting. Model first development. So this new Remix framework, which again will be a full stack framework, by the way, as I understand it, which builds up on Preact, is develop model first. Now, what does that mean? That means they aim to build it such that it has great support for and by AI, large language models. So that means that if you're using large language models for coding, if you're using Cursor, or if you are talking to Google Gemini or ChatGPT and you're trying to plan a project that uses Remix version 3 then in the future maybe, the idea is that the model has a good and an easy time understanding this new framework. It should know how that framework works. It should be able to suggest meaningful code. It should be able to assist you really, really well during the development process. And that is a really interesting path to take. It's probably the right one because time has changed, right? We're living in a different world now. Now, it's not necessarily as dramatically different as some people suggest. I don't think we're all going to be jobless in 6 months because that has already been said like 12 months ago. But things have changed for sure. And large language models are there. AI assistants are there. I would not encourage you to let AI do everything because in my experience, it's not good enough for that yet. Maybe that changes. I don't think it will to the extent it would need to, but these assistants are definitely super powerful and they're very valuable assistants. That is what they are in the end. So if you are building a framework right now, there probably have been easier times to do that. Like 2015, 16, those were the golden times for JavaScript frameworks, I would say. We had new frameworks every day back then. But nowadays, it's definitely a bit harder to create and launch a new framework and make it popular because all these large language models have been trained on, well, the entire internet. And therefore, they know React, then nothing for a very long time, and then Angular, Vue, and so on. Which is why if you ask a large language model, an AI assistant, to build you a dynamic web application, chances are high it will give you a React app. So that's a problem we already have, and I have created a standalone video where I talk about this potential problem on my main YouTube channel, Maximilian Schwarzmüller. There I have this, where is it? Is AI creating a dev monoculture video? So that is something that's already happening. But for that reason, it's of course a bit harder to create, or a lot harder probably, to build a new framework these days, because making it popular, making people know about it, marketing it, that's really difficult. So developing it model first is probably important because you really need a way of increasing your chances of having large language models detect your framework, understand your framework, suggest code related to your framework, and make it particularly easy for developers to work with your framework in conjunction with large language models. So it's a new principle, something we haven't seen before in the past because AI wasn't a thing as it is today. Large language models weren't a thing as they are today, I should say. But, well, they are now, so that makes sense. And it will be interesting to see whether that works out or not. Okay, well, that was a very long monologue. I'll continue, but let me first dive into the chat and see if there are any questions related to this. Let's see, lots of other questions, and I will get back to those. Do you think Next.js AI agent for creating web apps will be the next big thing? So I'm not 100% sure what you mean. Like you mean an AI agent that knows a lot about Next.js and helps you build Next.js applications? I can definitely see dedicated agents or MCP servers that have deep knowledge about a certain domain become more and more important in the future. And it kind of is what model first development could be referring to here, that you really try to optimize everything for AI. Maybe the Remix team will also launch their own MCP so that it's as easy as possible for developers to build an application with a certain technology, and so that you don't have to manually insert all the necessary context all the time, but that instead the model already knows about it or has an MCP server it can talk to get additional information. So yeah, there's that. And I'll get back to all these other questions later. So that was the first principle. The next principle is build on web APIs, and that's also interesting. It also kind of works together with the fourth principle, avoid dependencies. The idea of the Remix team essentially is to make the Remix version 3 framework as slim as possible. At least that's how I understand it. Because they want to use what's already available in the browser, in Node.js, or in other JavaScript runtimes like Cloudflare workers and so on. So they want to use that, and in general, they don't want to use dependencies unless they really have to. For example, they also don't want to use Vite, as far as I know. And there has been some discussion on X whether it's a good idea to skip the bundler and instead rely on native browser support for importing multiple JavaScript files. You can do it. You can build a JavaScript application without a bundler for sure. You don't need one, but using a bundler has certain advantages. It reduces the amount of HTTP requests that are sent all the time, for example, and those can slow the website down if it's a lot. It can help with problems like this. We'll see how that works out. It's good to have innovation. I'd say it's always good to have people try something new, because otherwise you can't advance technology as a whole. You can't advance the overall ecosystem if nobody tries anything new. Having a framework that has a minimal amount of dependencies and tries to use existing APIs as much as possible also sounds good to me, because the more dependencies you have, the more potential problems you have. Now, of course, dependencies exist for a good reason, and often you need to use a dependency. You don't want to write everything from scratch on your own. It's a lot of work. But of course, dependencies may not be maintained anymore in the future, which could become a problem. Dependencies might solve a problem in a certain way that is good enough, but maybe not the exact solution you were looking for. Dependencies can, of course, also introduce security vulnerabilities, and dependencies can bloat your overall framework size. They can bloat your package, so to say, because it's all code that must be loaded in some way. And of course, if you're using a dependency because it solves a certain problem, but it also solves 10 other problems, you're potentially also importing the code for those 10 other problems, even though you don't need it. Of course, we got technology, or we got solutions, I should say, like tree shaking, which aim to get rid of code that's not being used. But for that to work, the dependency has to be written in a certain way that supports it, and chances are that you might still end up with some code you actually don't need. So having a very slim framework sounds good. It also sounds like a lot of work, because you might have to reinvent the wheel a lot. So we'll see how that works out. Now, religiously, runtime is actually also related to that. That's the bundler part I mentioned. Demand composition, that here is something I actually have to read again. Abstractions should be single purpose and replaceable. A composable abstraction is easy to add and remove. Every package must be useful. New features should first be attempted as a new package. Okay, so the idea is really to have a framework that allows you to really like mix and match and use only the parts you need, so that you can use everything if you need everything. But if you just need, I don't know, authentication, if they plan on including that, you could just import that. So have a very flexible framework, I guess. And the 6th point is kind of related to that. So we could talk a lot more about just Remix version 3, but we don't know a lot about it yet. And I'm not a fan of having lots of theories about something where there isn't a lot of information. So instead, I'm really excited to see what they will come up with. I mean, they have built React Router. Oh, the blinds are kind of coming up. They have built React Router. They have built Remix. They clearly know what they're doing. So I've also read some posts and comments on Reddit and X, of course, of people that were really negative about Remix v3. And yeah, that's the annoying part about the internet. I'm not a fan of that. Instead, I'm really excited to see what we'll end up with. And having more innovation always sounds like a good idea to me. Nobody has to use it. Yeah, never forget that. But of course, it will be a challenging task because having almost no dependencies is challenging in a world where we have large language models that kind of dictate what's popular and what isn't. That's challenging, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Definitely exciting plans. Now, related to that, one question: what will happen to the existing Remix applications? Is there a way to migrate, if that even is possible, to React Router? This is one thing I had about frameworks. Angular was a perfect example. Yeah, I guess you mean the Angular to Angular 2 transition, which was really kind of difficult in 2016. But yeah, so what happens to the existing Remix applications? Remix as a framework will, as far as I understand it, only be continued as this new framework I just mentioned. Oh, there is a new blog post which was published whilst I was talking here. Anyways, yeah, so Remix will continue to live as a brand new framework. I would imagine whoa. I did not mean to do that. I would imagine that they will still publish updates for the Remix package on NPM, bug fixes and so on. So that will probably continue, right? So we still get some updates here. But yes, you should also be able to migrate. And they have a guide here in this blog post, React Router v7. Here, for Remix v2 users, this release brings a host of improvements. Check out the Remix v2 upgrade guide for more information on how you can upgrade to React Router v7. So yes, you can move your Remix application over to use React Router, which then essentially is Remix again, just merged into it. Okay, so yeah, that was a lot of talk. Too much fragmentation now with React. Yeah, I see what you mean. I guess like the web development space in general got more and more complex because the applications we build also get more and more complex. And then it can also feel unnecessarily complex because you got so many opinions by people like me, to be honest, but all these other content creators, people that post on X, and it can sometimes feel like you need to know it all. The truth just is you don't. And you don't have to use Next.js, you don't have to use React Router if you don't need it. Of course, I understand that it can sometimes be difficult to find out if you need it or not. And yeah, it can definitely feel overwhelming. I definitely see that. Okay, so that was the Remix part. Now, I want to go through some questions that also are not necessarily related to that, but I don't want to miss any. So let's see. Is there a dedicated React Router instead of a third party now? I don't fully get that by Ephra, but if it means you can still use React Router as you always did, you don't need to replace it because of this change, if that's what you meant. I wish I could use Pug when creating React components. It's so awesome. There probably is some way of making this work. The Pug templating language. But I personally have never played around with it, and it definitely won't be trivial, I guess. So yeah, I hear you. It's not easy to use anything but JSX if you want to use React. There might not be a way of using any other templating language. I took your Flutter course. It was great. I even built a web app page with Flutter. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Victor. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking that Flutter course and for the great feedback. I'm super happy you liked it. Yeah, Flutter is really amazing. Like recently in my bubble on X, it felt like Flutter was getting quite a lot of hate, actually. And I never fully understood this because I love React Native, but I also really, really love Flutter. It's such an amazing framework. It has its problems. They all do. React Native also has its problems. But you can be super productive with Flutter. I really like it. So yeah, thank you so much for the great feedback. I'm happy you liked the course. Hi, everybody who said hi. And will I soon create a Laravel course? Not really, because I haven't worked with Laravel in a very long time. So that's not something I'm planning right now. Will you ever make an Electron React course? Maybe also with TypeScript and Node? Maybe, but also not planned right now. I will be honest, I got so many projects going on, not all related to courses, but some are. I would love to do so much more. It's just time. If you were switching to the tech industry from a non-technical background and your main goal was to find a job, which programming language and tech stack would you choose? That is a great question. I tried to learn C#, but feels like Mern seems more popular. Most things are React here in the USA. So, that was a different question. Also, AI is a big question generally. Yes, it is. And actually, that is something I also prepared. I guess we can jump into it right now. Maybe you know this chart here. It's a really depressing chart about software development job postings on Indeed in the United States. So this is not the entire world, of course. This is not even the entire United States. It's just Indeed. But yeah, we are here. We've been here. So that, of course, has been like the absolute best. That was in 2022. People were hiring software developers like crazy because money was cheap. We had the pandemic. All those companies felt like they all need to do way more when it comes to digitization. They need to hire more developers because they need to build more software. And then the pandemic kind of ended, faded out, and money was not cheap anymore. And you probably heard that before. I also talked about this before in some videos. I don't want to bore you, but these factors, the fact that people realized that they don't need as many software developers maybe, and more importantly, that they couldn't afford that many software developers anymore because money wasn't cheap anymore, that led to this development. Now, there also is AI, of course. And you could argue that since AI was introduced around here, right? So ChatGPT, that was launched here in November 2022. You could argue that since AI, as we know it today, or what we mean today when we say AI, since that was introduced here, you could say this decline, this decline here is because of AI. But I don't think that's the case, which does, of course, not mean that AI doesn't have an impact. It's definitely been way easier to get a new job, especially as a junior developer, and AI doesn't help with that. I'm not convinced that many companies are not hiring because of AI, but it will probably be a factor. There probably will be people, human resources in people in companies and CEOs and so on, that feel like, do we really need a new software engineer for this project or for these projects? Or can we maybe give AI a try? And even if then maybe AI doesn't work as well as they would need it to, it might be good enough Or it might simply mean that existing developers need to do more to compensate for the shortcomings of AI, but there still isn't a new job being created. Because if, to put it very simple, if the CEO is convinced that you don't need new hires because AI can do it, even if AI can't, well, then the existing employees will have to do more. So that's that. Therefore, AI, I would think, has some influence, but it's not the main reason for this development. It may, however, mean that in the future this stays flat. I'm not sure if it will decline even more. It may to some degree, but probably not super sharply. But I also don't think it will go up sharply anytime soon. I do think that AI has the potential of meaning that more developers are needed midterm, unless AI really becomes capable to replace us all, which I don't think. I could be wrong though, of course. But it may lead to more software being written midterm. So it may lead to more jobs being created midterm, but in the short term, it's definitely hard. So to get back to this question, if you were switching to the tech industry from a non-technical background and your main goal was to find a job, which programming languages and tech stack would you choose? Then there definitely have been easier times for that, to be fully transparent. But then I would still go with whatever you personally find most interesting, because nobody can tell what will be in demand in 2 or 3 years. Yes, you could argue that there are certain areas where AI is better than others, or can do more of our work than in other areas. For example, web development. AI is probably more capable at web development tasks than it is at writing raw game engine code with C++. The simple reason is that there is more code available on the internet, publicly available, I should say, related to web development than there is to C++ game engine development, because those game engines are closed proprietary code bases. The Unity code base, the Unreal Engine code base, and all those games written on top of those code bases, that code is mostly not available on the internet, not publicly available. So therefore, of course, there's less training data available. So you could argue that you have better chances if you go into such a direction. On the other hand, you still don't have a guarantee for that. And especially the game industry, since I used it as an example, has also been hit by massive layoffs. So I would not follow this rationale. You could argue that even though AI is really good at web development, that just means that more applications, more web apps will be written in the future, or someone will need to fix all the suboptimal code that's being generated by AI. And companies might realize that they need people to fix that code in the near-term future. So nobody knows how the future will look like. And therefore, I would really try to find out what you like. And then I would go with that, because that's always been what I've been convinced of. If you really like something, then chances of getting good at that are much higher than if you try to get good at something you don't like. And you need to be good at what you're doing, especially nowadays where we have AI. Because if you're not good, then you're not just competing with all those other developers that are competing for less jobs, but you're then also competing with AI. That will be harder. So yeah, that's that. So what else do we have? I had one question related to Next, I think, related to Next 4. And then there also is another question. Next and Vue seem so good. Why don't you think they are more popular in the USA? Most things are React here. So first off, Next 4 is something which shipped as an alpha now in June 2025. As it seems, I will be honest, it's been quite some time since I last actively worked with Nuxt. I liked it a lot, but then I more and more switched over to React for the various projects I was working on. So it's been some time since I last worked with Nuxt. I will say, however, that the last time I did work with Nuxt, it was really enjoyable, a really great framework. So it seems like they planned to launch Nuxt 4 in June 2024, and well, it took them a year longer. And then Nuxt 5 will come later once Nitro v3 is ready. Nitro, as far as I recall, is their web server toolkit. I did work a bit with that. It's been like a year ago or so, but it was quite a fun, a really performant Node.js web server. But yeah, I can't say much about Nuxt 4 therefore, since I, well, haven't really explored it. I can talk about the popularity part though. So Nuxt and Vue not being more popular, because I 100% agree. Nuxt and Vue are amazing. Vue is a really amazing framework. And of course, it has parts that I maybe don't like, where I think like, oh, it would be great if you could do it in another way. But Vue is a really great framework. I always loved working with Vue. Now, I also do like working with React and Angular. I honestly do. But Vue was always a bit simpler in a good way than React, and especially also Angular. I mean, React also got more complex now, but in the past, Angular was most complex, Angular 2+, I mean. Then we had React, and then we had Vue. And Vue was simpler, but not really less powerful. So yeah, I really liked, or I do like, Vue a lot. But I think the problem is that, as in so many other areas in life, when it comes to JavaScript frameworks, it kind of is a winner-takes-all game. It's a bit like social networks. And yeah, we do have multiple social networks. We do have X, we do have Facebook, we do have YouTube, but they all have kind of different flavors, right? YouTube is about videos. Facebook, the golden days are over for me, but clearly many people, I guess maybe a bit older people, are using it. X is about having this instant news feed. So they all have their flavors. But it's really hard to launch a YouTube competitor nowadays. I guess, yeah, we have TikTok, but again, different flavor, short videos. And I guess it's kind of similar with these JavaScript frameworks. Angular 1 came very, very early. I think it was before React, if I'm not totally mistaken now. It's been so long ago, I'm not even sure anymore. But yeah, I think it was before React. Then we had React, and then we had Vue 1, but that didn't really catch a lot of attention. But then we had Vue 2, which was amazing, and Vue 3. And the problem, of course, is that if you come later to the party, more people are already using those alternatives. And I guess especially the mental model of React, that everything is JavaScript, which never really was entirely true, but it kind of is, that really is something a lot of people seemed to like. And then it became like this self-fulfilling prophecy, kind of. Like, a lot of people were using React, a lot of developers were using React, therefore a lot of companies started using React because they had employees that advocated for React. So they started using React for their projects. That meant that they were hiring more React developers, and therefore, of course, more developers were learning React because they wanted to get a job. And that's kind of how it worked. And to some extent, it's similar for Angular. Angular is definitely seeing less usage than React, I guess, but Angular has and still is always been pretty popular in some of the large enterprises, and of course also Google is using Angular a lot, so that also helps. But for those reasons, these were these flywheels, kind of, right? So where more and more people were using the framework because they wanted to get a job, and therefore the companies would use it even more because there were more React developers than Vue developers, for example. And I guess that's the simple, unsatisfying story. it's really probably just timing and bad luck. And of course, that then leads to a lot of other things that kind of makes it even worse. Because, of course, for the same reason, the React ecosystem is more vibrant to some degree. There is an endless amount of libraries and packages you can use with React for animation, for routing. And yeah, the Vue system also, and also Angular, they also all got all the crucial libraries. I mean, with Angular, they're built in because it's really a framework that comes with batteries included. But for Vue, there also, of course, is animation, routing. But chances are higher that if you're facing some niche problem, or if you need a very specific UI component for React, you can find it. For Vue, you maybe can't. And that, again, is another reason for more companies and people using React and so on. So yeah, that's it. That's the answer, or my answer for that, I would say. Thank you very much for your Next.js, Node.js, React courses. Do you have plans to get a Python course? Yeah, as I mentioned before, I also would love to create another Python course. It's just, I can't promise it, and it's definitely not planned in short term because too many ideas, too little time. I'm very sorry. Would you publish a Next.js book with Pact? No, I did publish a book, React Key Concepts. You can get it. You can learn all about React in depth in there. It's a really great book, fully updated for React 19. It's the second edition because I wanted to write a book, and Pact approached me. So I said, yes, I would love to write a book. And that's why I wrote this React book. But writing a book, unsurprisingly, is a lot of work. And as I just said, time is a huge issue for probably everybody, but also for me. And yeah, therefore it's not a priority for me right now to write another book, so I won't write a Next.js or any other book in the near future. Max, your explanations are always so logical and concise. It's definitely not just personal preference, but I love how you personally reason. Thank you so much, Justice. I don't know what to say. That means Allah, or justice, I guess. That means a lot to me. Thank you so very much. Super happy to hear that you like my explanations, and I try my best to hopefully share some knowledge and help here and there. So hearing that it worked really means a lot to me. Any videos or live streams of you speed live coding some projects on here? Some by something with front-end framework like Next or Next. I have had some live streams where we worked on some projects. It's probably not speed coding because I'm not one of those developers that keep on slashing on their keyboards. I guess I'm decently fast, but I'm not super fast. And I feel like if I were speed coding, I would probably just have to do a lot of bug fixing because, yeah, I'm really like the developer. I think about a problem, I write the code, think about it, write the code, use AI assistance. But yeah, I will definitely build more projects here in live streams and so on. So that's coming, maybe just not in the speed coding way. Some indie hacking tips on how to develop software independently. I do plan to share a lot more about that because I also do plan to publish some software or software as a services in the near or midterm future, in addition to courses. So that won't stop. I also will continue creating videos and so on. But yeah, I want to publish more. I want to create more software. I want to build stuff. And yeah, I definitely plan on also sharing some insights related to that once I have them. I wouldn't be the dev I am today without your Angular courses. Big thank you, Max. Vladimir, thank you so much. As I said before to others, also same to you, means so much to me. Super. Hearing that I could help you become a better developer is just amazing. It's really just amazing. So thank you so much for the amazing feedback. Thank you and everybody else who's writing so many kind things. I don't know what to say. It really means a lot to me. Thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. Should a web developer learn more data science to be in demand in the future, or is there no safe haven from AI? Good question. So it kind of relates to what I said before. I would not try to optimize my career or I would not try to optimize the programming languages I learn or the field of programming I get into because of AI. Because AI is developing so rapidly that it's impossible to tell what will be in demand in a year or two. And data science could also be replaced or vastly augmented by AI. So, as I mentioned before, I don't believe in the replace part. I know there are people who are very, very convinced that AI will replace the majority of the workforce, not just in programming, but also in many other areas within the next 2 years. If they're right, good for them, bad for us, I guess, and bad for them probably too. But I'm not convinced. I don't really think that will be the case. But yeah, AI is here. And data science is also something where AI can already help. That might become more in the future. So as I mentioned before, I would try to focus on what you like, because then that is the easiest way of getting good at it. And getting good at something is, in my opinion, the best defense against AI, because AI is a great assistant. If it will replace us, it is what it is. Then there is no good choice. But if it won't replace us, then if you're one of the best in your field, or if you're at least better than the average, you'll have good chances, especially if you leverage AI, that in my opinion. Any plans to make a Nest course? No, Nest.js is a framework I have not used in the last 5 years or so, so I won't create a course on that. Max Mentor's project from his Vue course is my default go-to blueprint for building things. That's amazing thing. Yeah, it's good. Good to hear that it's useful. In the future, how can we use React plus generative AI to secure the job? Again, as I said, getting good at something is important. And yeah, leveraging AI is also important, in my opinion. And I also know there are people that would disagree with that, which is, of course, great. But I'm using AI every day, as probably many of you are. I'm using Cursor, I'm using Google Gemini for planning projects, for discussing problems, and I can only recommend that you do that you embrace AI. Now, just for a little shameless plug, I have a course, AI for Devs, for developers, where I share some of my knowledge about GitHub Copilot, Cursor, using it efficiently, and I do plan on adding more or updating this course in the future also. That might be interesting, but independent from that course, no matter if you take it or not, I would definitely try to stay updated and play around with Cursor, play around with ChatGPT, use all these technologies, because they are here to stay and they can make you more efficient. At least that is my experience. There always is the danger of relying too much on AI, though. I have built projects or parts of projects in the past, like a week ago, or it actually happens almost every day, where I'm using AI and I'm asking for some feature and I'm a bit lazy and I keep asking for more and more and more. And at some point I see, well, this project is maybe not working the way I want it to work, or maybe it is, but I already see that the code base is taking a direction I don't want it to take because it's becoming harder to maintain. AI starts changing things it shouldn't change. You all know these problems. And I keep falling back into that problem, so to say, regularly. So I even though I know better, sometimes I'm lazy, and therefore I would not rely on AI too much, because whenever I followed down that road, whenever I relied on it too much, it just meant I had to spend a couple of hours refactoring the code on my own because I didn't understand it. Because so much of the code base was written by AI that I really had to take a lot of time to fully understand the code base and then refactor it and continue working on it. So use it as an assistant, but try to resist the temptation of using it too much. That is a real danger, in my opinion. Do you have any plans to create an AI development course on UI on Udemy? You mean for a course where I teach you how to create AI models? No, because I have no expertise in that. I do have some AI courses like the one I just showed you. I also have the general ChatGPT and generative AI course, where in general we walk you through prompt engineering, building RAG systems and agents with AI. And I got the relatively new local large language models course, where I show you how you can leverage Ollama and LM Studio to run models locally on your system, which is amazing. I'm a big fan of that. But I don't have a course on building AI models because I got no expertise on that. There are people that know how to do that. I'm not one of them, so I don't create a course on that. While learning web development today, should one use coding agents straight away or only after clearing basic? That is an excellent question, Harit. So for one, as I just mentioned, I wouldn't rely too much on AI, but when it comes to learning to code, I would not really use coding agents. I would use ChatGPT or Gemini for asking clarifying questions, because they can be very useful tools for that. Sure, they can hallucinate. I would not trust 100% on everything they tell you, but they can be really good as helpers during the learning process. So when going through some documentation or some online course, doesn't matter. If something's not clear, or if you want an additional example for something, asking an AI chat for that is a great idea. But I would not try to have AI generate too much code, because unless you're super, super disciplined, and I guess no human is, you won't really read and understand all that code. Maybe you know that we've all been there, that we wanted to learn something, but we didn't really do it ourselves. We just watched a video, we just read an article, and we were like, yeah, I get that. But then when you had to do it on your own, you had no idea on how to do it. And I think the danger is the same if you rely too much on AI during the learning process. So of course, at some point you need to learn how to efficiently use AI as an assistant, but if you're learning a programming language or some library, some framework, I would do that with as little AI help as possible. At least that's how I'm doing it. You can try a different approach, but I feel like there is a danger if you rely too much on it. What's next? The pipeline for people who consume your material. Rondolph, I got some courses I'm working on, or course updates, but I don't want to share anything yet because I don't want to promise anything which then is delayed. But there are some updates and some new courses, definitely. Of course, I'll continue having live streams, create content for YouTube. And as I mentioned before, there are some software projects I'm working on, about which I'm also really excited. So as I also said before, therefore, for all these reasons, for all these projects, time is a huge issue. But I'm making good progress on all these different areas. So yeah, there will hopefully be a constant stream of new stuff being released by me. And I will share it here on YouTube, everywhere, on all the social networks, LinkedIn, X, and so on. But yeah, sorry, it's a little bit vague. I know. I'm just always shy and hesitant when it comes to sharing something too early, because I never want to disappoint anyone. And I don't want to say, hey, I will release XYZ in 4 weeks, and then it takes 3 months and someone's unhappy. And I don't want that. Max, new golden age is utilizing AI for development better than others. Yeah, it's a huge opportunity. Leveraging AI better than others and being a good developer at the same time is definitely not easy to achieve, but it's such a good opportunity. It really is. So it's easy to be negative about AI. And to be very honest, if we wouldn't have large language models, if we would have just continued the mode we were in 2022, 2021, I would be fine with that. But they're here now, and we have to adapt. And they do give us good opportunities. So yeah, you can embrace them, you can run away, but it is what it is. Like, they're not going away. So yeah, I'll definitely try to make the best of them. So many questions. That's amazing. I'm taking your AI course. It's very well structured. I wonder, how do you generally learn something new? Do you learn from a book or random sources on the internet? It's really a mixture. I do read books, indeed, and not for AI, because AI is changing too quickly. But for example, I learned Rust like 1.5 years ago, and I'm still learning it. I'm still not super good at it. And I learned Rust with books because I spent my entire day in front of a screen. I sometimes really like picking up a book. Now, to be fair, often I read that book next to my laptop, and because I want to practice whilst I'm reading. But it's nice to have like a mixture and to at least sometimes look at some paper instead of a screen. So I do use books, but more often than that, I use online documentation. I do use AI. I do use Gemini or ChatGPT for talking about problems or questions. Yeah, so it's really a mixture of all those resources out there. And for AI, when it comes to that, it's a lot of experimentation, and also reading documentation, reading blog posts, and yeah, really playing around with all these models, what they can do, following conferences, watching keynotes like the Google I/O keynote. It's a lot of resources to digest, but yeah, it's what I like in the end. So that's how I stay updated there. And then I create videos and try to share the knowledge so that you don't have to watch everything I do. That's the idea. Thanks. I started understanding many concepts in Angular after watching your course. Still a long way, but I intend to repeat your videos to understand and apply better. That's the way to go. So like with the huge advantage with videos and online courses is, of course, you can watch them as often as you want. And you do need to watch certain videos a bit more often to fully understand a concept. That is totally normal. And I'm super happy to hear that the Angular course is helpful. Angular is amazing. I wanted to talk about Angular 20. Maybe we'll get to it. But yeah, Angular is amazing. Super happy to hear that the course is helpful. And having to repeat something is totally normal. No reason to feel bad about it. So yeah, thank you for the amazing feedback. I hear very little of Grok when it comes to development, but the way it explains things is really so nice, and the code seems more understandable too, at least to me. Absolutely possible. I guess the thing just is we have so many models and model providers and model versions. So we don't just have OpenAI and Google and Anthropic and XAI. We don't just have all those providers, but then they all have different models. So I guess that's why some of them slip through sometimes. Because it's, at least for me, impossible to keep up with all of them. I try the best I can. I play around with all of them, but I guess everybody has their favorites, and yeah, that's probably the reason. I couldn't even tell how well Grok is at coding because I never tried it. I'm always using Gemini or Claude because everybody tells me that they're the best, and I have to use some of them. I can't try all of them all the time because, of course, I also want to get some stuff done. And yeah, but probably I should give it a try, to be very honest. It's probably not a bad model, yeah. And by the way, if it works good for you, no reason to change it. No reason to use what everybody else is using if you got a model that works very well for you. Because especially in the AI world nowadays, there are a lot of people that try to tell you that one approach or one model is the best, and you might all know these expos that you're falling behind if you're not using XYZ right now. Total BS, all of it. Forget about it. Try stuff out on your own, find your own opinion, and if something works well for you, stick to it. Of course, you will automatically hear people talk about other models. You can give a new model a try if it sounds good, but definitely don't get influenced too much by all those people that are very, very loud out there. Do you have any plans to create courses on other frameworks like Svelte? I do have a Svelte course, but it's a bit dated, I will admit. I created it a couple of years ago. And yeah, because as I mentioned, time is such an issue. Right now, I don't have any framework-specific courses planned. I might create more content on YouTube, though. I might cover it in live streams because I love working with all that stuff. I would love to create more courses. It's just a time problem. I agree with that. I like to use my ChatGPT as a senior programmer to ask questions to, always knowing what the answers might not be, that the answers might not be 100% correct, but a lot of times it helps fix issues or help with syntax or give me ideas. Yes, Gumbel, so that's relating back to what I mentioned before, that you should use AI as an assistant, but not rely on it too much. Yeah, as I mentioned, exactly my experience. And I really want to emphasize that using ChatGPT as an assistant to discuss ideas especially seems to be something not everybody is doing, because having it generate code is something everybody knows about, and obviously that makes sense to some degree. But just discussing stuff with ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok or Claude or some other model, that's such a powerful thing to do. Bouncing back ideas, discussing architectures or different solutions, that's so powerful. But of course it means you need to have a deep understanding of how to write code. If you're vibe coding, you can't discuss different approaches because you don't know different approaches, which is why I'm so convinced that it's still a good idea to learn to code, because knowing how to write code and having AI assistance, it's just a dream combination right now, honestly. Does your course include something related to RAG? Yes, my ChatGPT course does have a relatively new section, which was released like 4 weeks ago, about RAG, CAG, and fine-tuning. And in there, I show you a complete RAG and CAG, so complete RAG and CAG workflows with code and without code using N8N, so it is covered in there. And of course, not just the workflows, but also some theory behind it. So yeah, it's in the course. Not the only thing in the course, but it's in there. The course... the course on ChatGPT, you repeat the word ChatGPT so many of these, it's impossible to finish the course. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, it is a course that uses ChatGPT as the main AI assistant, because you have to choose some AI tool as the main tool. Otherwise, you create the same course a couple of times for every tool, even though it's mostly the same. But yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Nothing I can do about that. Hey Max, what do you think of making a course only for practice? Sometimes I feel like the courses have a lot of input in terms of information, but I feel like I need more practice. Yeah, so having courses that have more demo projects or something like this sounds like a great idea, and I agree that it would be interesting. It's just, the problem is creating courses that have more interesting demo projects is a lot of work, because you have to come up with all those projects, you have to test them. And if then something breaks, if something changes in the framework you're using, everything breaks. Everything in the course becomes unusable. Combine that with the fact that, unfortunately, project-focused courses do worse, at least in my experience. There isn't a lot of incentive for me to create such courses. So that's why instead I try to share these live streams here, for example, where this week it's different, but in the past weeks I built a lot of stuff. So I try to have more demo projects outside of courses, because for the reasons I mentioned. So yeah, that's what I'm currently trying, essentially. Will you add a server-side rendering project to your Angular course introducing incremental hydration and how to build a performant app? Maybe in the future, not planned right now, mostly for time reasons. And it's not the focus of the course too. I touch on server-side rendering there, but it's not an in-depth server-side rendering course. But yeah, I agree, would be interesting to add. Definitely something I would like to add more on, but not planned for the near future. Which AI models you consider to use? So I personally mostly use Google Gemini and ChatGPT. But that's just my thing. As I mentioned before, probably if I would use Grok a bit more, I might prefer that over Gemini. In my experience, quality is not that different for some tasks, and it also is not stable. Like, there could be a new version of Gemini 2.5 being rolled out behind the scenes without me recognizing. It's still called Gemini 2.5, but something changed. And all of a sudden, I just feel like those results used to be better. But then the next day, it might change again. So it's not super stable. So that's why I don't change models all the time, because they themselves change so much. Instead, I have like Gemini, ChatGPT. These are my go-to models. And yeah, it works good enough for me. What are your thoughts on codecs? That's a great question, because codecs, but also, for example, cursor background agents, in case you missed it, cursor 1.0 was announced. And I found that quite interesting, because 1.0 is like a main version, right? It's finally done. Not really. They will continue innovating, of course. But in there, they also got this background agent, which now is really available to everyone unless you're using privacy mode. And background agent, like codecs and all those other AI programming agents that exist out there, are really interesting, but not something I'm really using just yet. And the main reason is that I had such mixed results with letting AI do bigger tasks or bigger changes, apply bigger changes to my code base, that I don't feel confident having such a standalone agent going to work on my code in the background on some server. I feel like I might just be coming back to a lot of changes that I have to review. And since I'm really struggling to get all the stuff done I try to get done right now, I don't have the time for these experiments. Obviously, I could just give such an agent one task and just discard it if I'm not happy. So I should probably give it a try, but I haven't really tried it a lot. But now that we have more and more agents coming out every day, now that background agent and cursor is like a built-in thing, I will probably give it a try very soon, and I'll see how well it does. In general, I like the idea a lot. I like the idea a lot because it's really a nice... It's nice to think of a future where I could give the AI a list of tasks and it spins up one agent per task, or I spin up one agent per task, and it does its thing. And whilst I'm working, it's also working on the code base. And when I'm sleeping, it's also working on it. So having some developer that's working on my code nonstop is a really nice thought. Even if it's maybe just bug fixes and smaller changes, that definitely sounds like a good future to me. So, yeah, I'm a fan of codecs and all these other tools by Google and all these other coding assistants, even though I haven't used them yet, because I like the idea and I think they're slowly but steadily getting to a point where they can get meaningful stuff done, and where I also have a better understanding of what I should ask them to do for me. I probably won't start codecs and say, hey, build me a super complex application. Chances are this is not going to work out that well. But of course, I absolutely see a scenario where I know I got these 4 features that I need to work on. 2 of them I will handle with AI tomorrow, but the other 2 I'll give the AI tonight. That's definitely something I see doing. Hey Max, if I want to learn more about animation and GZAP or Framer Motion, what would you recommend? So I would recommend official documentation combined with AI, combined with YouTube videos or courses. Courses especially can have the advantage that you have like a very guided approach. You don't have to find out yourself what's important and in which order you should learn something. Documentation and AI has the advantage that you can have AI generate examples for you, or that you can ask clarifying questions. And therefore, I would really combine these different things. And that's how I personally go about learning new things, and it might work for you as well. Did you try Deoxys yet? If I'm not mistaken, Deoxys is this Next full stack framework. Yeah, it is. No, not really. I read through the docs though, because I really found the idea behind it interesting. But since I'm still at a point where I want to get way better at Rust fundamentals. I haven't explored a framework like this yet. So no, I haven't. Angular 20 is said it's about stabilization. Do you think further Angular versions will be completely zoneless and performant and also help bring back Angular popularity? So finally, it's good that you asked this, Pushkal, because I wanted to talk about Angular 20 as well. And I know Angular is not everybody's favorite. And if you go to 10-stack charts here, if we take a look at React and we take a look at Angular core, which in the end is the core Angular package, where is it? At Angular core, of course, we can see the gap widened. I'm pretty convinced, by the way, it also widened because, again, AI, large language models, ChatGPT became a thing here, and AI keeps on suggesting, excuse me, AI keeps on suggesting React as a tech stack. So especially in the last couple of months, we saw that gap widening here, right? So not everybody's favorite solution, of course, but Angular is an amazing framework, and especially in some big enterprises, it is the main framework being used there. Google, of course, also uses it a lot. And Angular has seen some amazing development over the last couple of years. So, and to understand this, it's important to understand that Angular really felt a bit stagnant around, I guess, 2019, 2020. And they were doing a lot of stuff. But from a developer perspective, it felt like there wasn't as much innovation going on as in React. At least it felt to me like this. And now for the last 3 years, they did a lot. Most importantly, they introduced signals as a primitive to manage state in your applications, and that allowed them to move towards a future without Zone.js. Now, in case you don't know, and you probably don't care, so I'll keep it short, but in case you don't know, Zone.js is a library that's being used and maintained by Angular that in the end watches for a broad variety of things, events, that could lead to a change on the website. So if you click a button, that could of course potentially mean that something changes that should be reflected on the website. So Zone.js would watch for all these possible events, and then Angular would check if something changed, and if it did, it would update the website. Of course, there were various optimizations in place, but that's in a nutshell how that works. And now with Angular 20, finally, zoneless Angular applications are becoming more of a thing. They actually introduced support for it in experimental mode in the last version, Angular 19 already, but now it's in a developer preview, which means it will soon become stable, probably. And zoneless mode is possible because of signals, as a state management mechanism inherently are able to tell Angular that something changed. So now it no longer needs Zone.js to watch for all possible events that could trigger a change, because signals are a mechanism that actively notify Angular if some value changed. So there is no need to use Zone.js, and therefore you can get rid of Zone.js when using signals only, and that is becoming more and more stable, and that's a great direction because that makes Angular simpler, a bit more performant because all these extra checks aren't needed anymore, and the Angular framework as a whole also gets a bit smaller because that Zone.js library isn't needed anymore. Combine that with the fact that signals can make it a bit easier to understand what's going on in your Angular application, because it's very clear that your UI will only change if you change some signal value. Combine all these things and you have a pretty good development we had over the last couple of years in Angular. A lot of things changed to the better there, I would say. You can still write Angular code the way you did 4 years ago, by the way, if you don't like the new approach. But this has been some really good road the Angular team has been walking on, so to say. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. I really like the new Angular, and I guess we will see more innovation there, to get back to your question. I think it will not just get more performant, but the Angular team has also played around with ideas of having different component authoring formats, so that maybe in some future we don't need classes anymore, or maybe we can have simpler classes, less boilerplate, because Angular has always been like a very boilerplate heavy framework. Angular 2 plus, I should say. And it's already gotten a bit better, but there's still more work to be done there, or more potential improvements. So I think that's something we'll see there. But Angular 20, as I also shared in my video on my YouTube channel, so in my latest video there, I talked a bit about Angular 20. That is really for the first time since like 2 years, I would say, a version that doesn't change as much, but that's instead more about stabilizing stuff, which is great, because you can't have lots of new features with every new version. You really have a high danger of splitting the ecosystem, of losing people, of making it almost impossible to keep up with all those changes. So you can't have too much innovation in a short time period. No innovation is also bad. And I think like the Angular team has a really good approach here. I think they really kind of nailed it. A lot of innovation, now taking a break, kind of. It's not like there's nothing new in this release. It's just a bit less. So yeah, really good. And I think we'll see some exciting changes in the future as well. Thank you so much for the live stream. So very informative. Waiting on you to give some indie hacking AI tips and to hear more about them. All the best to you. Thank you so much, Justice, in case you're still here. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah, I would definitely will share more. Your English is very good for someone who lives in Germany. Thank you so much. I try my best. Obviously not perfect, obviously not native speaker like, but I talk a lot of English, so yeah, I try my best. Oh my god, I do not like Angular. No worries, I'm done with Angular. Just wanted to talk about Angular version 20, and that Angular, in my opinion, is so much better than you could think if you just see all the hate it sometimes gets. But obviously everybody can choose whatever they want. But Angular, a really great framework in my opinion. I'm a bit biased because Angular was actually the first framework after Laravel, to be fair, but the first JavaScript framework I ever created a course on. And yeah, so it will always have a special place in my heart. But I will say the innovation we saw in Angular over the last couple of years has been amazing. And unlike in React, I feel like it hasn't added more complexity. And I like React too, by the way, yeah. But I feel like Angular's innovation doesn't feel like a lot of extra complexity. Instead, it feels like a lot of opportunities, at least to me, but not necessarily complexity. Hi Max, I like that you stress preserving the programming muscle when working with AI. What is your approach pipeline for a good blend between large language model assistance and independent coding? Motolin, yeah, so that's the part with which I also regularly struggle, because I really see AI, as I said before, as an assistant, and I use it as an assistant, but often I get lazy, as I explained before, and then I use it for more and more, and I ask for more and more changes, and then I find myself in a code base which I don't understand anymore, and I have to spend time learning that code base, I have to spend time cleaning it up, and then I think, maybe I would have been quicker if I would have written the code myself right from the start. So I think it's really hard to get this right. It's probably simply a skill we all have to get. And it's also something where we have to constantly adjust because AI keeps on changing quickly. So what's true today isn't necessarily true in a year or in 6 months. But definitely, I'm a big fan of using AI for small tasks, for discussing problems, but not for large-scale changes. Maybe that works for simple projects. Maybe that works if you don't care about the code, if you know that you won't add more features and that you don't need to cover all edge cases. But for any serious project, in my experience, it's better to have AI work on small individual problems and to use it as a sparring partner, so to say. With backend background, I love Angular. Yeah, I fully understand that Angular has a lot of ideas and solutions to problems that you don't find in React, for example. Like this whole dependency injection thing might not matter to you. You might not like it. But if you do like it, it's something that's there in Angular, baked in. And it's not just that, of course, there's so much stuff which I also like. I always enjoyed Angular's way of solving certain problems. But yeah, it is what it is. From your perspective for enterprise project, Angular or React. So if I were building a super complex project, which I probably wouldn't alone on my own, but if I were to, I could roll the dice or throw a coin because they're really both equally capable. Obviously, as I shared, if you just look at the stats, React looks vastly more popular. If I look at my course, for example, at my course sales, it's not that drastic. The gap is smaller there. And I know that lots of big companies are using Angular. So if you're trying to find a job, you could really go for either of them. I guess the safer bet probably is React, but then again, there's also a bit more competition there. If you're looking to choose a framework for your own project, then I would go with the one you're better at. If you don't know either of the two, I would throw a coin, or I would probably start learning both, like for half a day or a day each, and then I would try to make a decision, which one did you like more? And then I would go with that, because there really isn't a wrong choice then. And by the way, if you know one of them, switching to the other isn't that difficult. Sure, a lot of ideas and concepts are different, but it's all about components, it's all about state, and there are some shared concepts, so it's not impossible to switch, I guess. How do you maintain such enthusiasm and passion to programming? How do you overcome burnouts? Yeah, so of course it helps that I always loved programming. So that's just, it's always been my hobby, and now it's my job. Therefore, it's not my hobby anymore, but I still love it. So I love diving into problems and solving them with code. But it also helps that I really try to mix things up. So of course I create courses, but I also create YouTube. I stream here because I like it. I work on my own software projects, both internal projects as well as projects which I will hopefully soon publish, as well as client projects in the past. So I have this mixture of things. Working on a course and preparing demo projects is totally different from working on a client project or your own project. And that is different from building something live on a live stream, of course. And of course, I also have like a private life. Like I have a wife, I have my hobbies, I enjoy playing video games, and I try to not have one aspect of my life take over too much of my time. Obviously, I spend the majority of my day working, but I really try to find an hour or two almost every day to play some video games or to do some other hobbies which I have. I have a pilot's license. I like to, so like a private pilot license, and therefore I enjoy flying a plane, not my own plane, but a charter plane, a small plane from time to time. So it's really the mixture of all these things, and yeah, that works well for me. So that's how I try to do that. Hi Max, I would like to thank you deep from my heart, as your teaching made me shape myself in my future. Also, still I prefer your courses. Amit, thank you so much, as I said before, also to everybody else, but I won't get tired of saying it, and I mean it. This really means a lot to me. Thank you so much for the amazing feedback. I'm super happy that my courses and all the content is helpful, so yeah, don't know what to say. Thank you so much. Do you usually build client applications with Mern? No. So I have used the Mern stack, but it's been a broad mixture of technologies. By the way, also something we haven't talked about today, and I guess it's something in general we haven't talked about a lot. Astro, or I guess I should point here. Astro. Also a very interesting framework, something I also would like to cover well, I guess we'll build something with it in a future stream, because Astro is actually a framework I've used surprisingly much on client and also private projects. So, for example, my website, maximilianschwarzmüller.com, it's of course not a complex website, but it is built with Astro, because Astro is a framework that's great for content-heavy sites like blogs or I guess also online shops, though I haven't built one with it. And it's not just for content-heavy sites, but it's especially amazing for that. And I feel like Astro is a framework that doesn't get as much attention as it actually deserves. So I'll try to change this, because I'm a big fan of Astro. And in case you don't know, and I guess chances are high you don't know, Astro in general is a web development framework just like Angular or React. And I know React isn't a framework, but we'll keep it simple here. But then again, it isn't, because in Astro, it's not about having a JavaScript-powered website. It's not about building a single-page application. Instead, it's about building a website that consists of multiple pages where every page is rendered on the server or pre-rendered during the build process. So you build a static website, but you're not limited to that. You can also build a server-side rendered application. You can build a dynamic website where maybe a page is pre-rendered on the server, but then it has some client-side interactivity. You can also build a website where parts of a site, parts of a page are rendered on the server, and then other parts are rendered on the client or on demand. So it's a really flexible framework. And best of all, unlike React and Angular, it doesn't come with its own JavaScript syntax or anything like that. Instead, in Astro, let me see if I can see some example here. In Astro, let's see. Let me show some code. In Astro, you build in the end HTML files, which you can then enrich with extra instructions that define how some data is fetched on the server or during the build process. And you can then define how your HTML content gets enriched with that. So you can use Astro as a static site builder, but you can then also add client-side interactivity or complex server-side capabilities. And you can, as I mentioned, also run it as a server-side rendered site. So not just as a static site builder where everything gets built at build time and where you then deploy your pre-rendered pages to some static host, but you can also instead use it to render every page on demand, to have a server that's running somewhere that's generating those pages as your visitors are coming in. And it's really amazing. If you're, for example, trying to build your own website, I would recommend taking a look at Astro. It's a great solution. So yeah, that's just something I also wanted to mention here. Also, because that is a framework I have used surprisingly often in the last couple of months and years. Yeah, and it's worth a look, I'd say. If you want to be a DevOps or cloud developer, I must go through fundamental of network like CCNA and this kind of fundamentals, or just start. Raphael, it's a great question. I would say I would just start. I would just start and learn about Linux, server administration, Docker. By the way, all topics I also enjoy a lot. I have more fun configuring servers than I probably should have, but it's for some reason it's something I like a lot. I would just start doing that. If you then ever need a certification for a job or to increase your chances of getting a job, getting that certification will definitely be easier if you already have a solid foundation than if you don't have that. Surprise, surprise. And therefore you don't lose anything by just diving in, building stuff, configuring some servers, learning about the command line and so on. you don't lose anything by doing that, but I think it's a bit more fun than if you try to learn specifically for a certain certification. I think it's more fun if you instead just try to achieve a certain goal. You could say, hey, I have a very simple demo dummy web server, and now, so like a Node.js web application, let's say, and now I want to configure a server to host it without Docker, let's say. And all of a sudden you have to learn about SSH and hardening SSH and configuring the server for that and server log files and configuring Linux and installing packages and exposing ports and about reverse proxies and Nginx. And all of a sudden you're in a brand new world that is probably not fun to everyone, but it's a lot of fun to me. So maybe it's the same for you. And then you can dive into Docker and so on. And I would definitely start with that. Therefore, in general, when learning something, in my opinion, it's always more fun if you just start building stuff instead of first going for a lot of theory and going for a certification. I guess that can quickly lead to you losing interest in something. Hi Max, I love your content and your teaching style. My question is, if I want to freelance and work directly for clients, what do you recommend I focus on? Example, React, Next.js, Laravel, Django. These are all excellent choices, I would say. You pretty much nailed it here. I would say these are probably the technologies that have most demand, also probably most competition, to be fair, but most demand too, and that is a good thing to have, I'd say. And I also love that you include Laravel and Django, because in this stream I primarily talked about JavaScript frameworks, naturally, because that is what I mostly work with. But hey, Laravel is such an amazing framework. As a JavaScript community, we sometimes forget about what exists outside of JavaScript, but Laravel is so amazing, and so is Django, but especially Laravel, I feel like, has a constant stream of new features being added. And don't get me wrong, it's the same for Django. It's also under active development on, but maybe I just read more about Laravel. That might be all, but it's a really amazing solution. And what I really like about Laravel is that if you have a client that wants to have a basic online shop, building that with Laravel or Django will probably be a bit easier than doing it with Next.js. Maybe it is not too difficult with Next.js, because nowadays with AI, it knows a lot about JavaScript and a lot about Next.js. You can get a lot of AI help. But with Laravel, for example, there's so much built in already. Stripe payments, all the database stuff, it's all built in. So you don't have to bring in a bunch of extra packages and learn how they work and worry about them not being maintained anymore. It's all in there. So I would definitely consider something like this as well. Now, which does not mean that there aren't great alternatives in the JavaScript world, but if you want to be, if you want a good option for client work and for being very versatile there, I would consider doing that. So going for Laravel, for example, or in the JavaScript world, Next.js probably, and React in general is a good idea. I'm observing that in the Netherlands, actually, Vue jobs are increasing compared to Vue jobs a few years ago, while React is slowing a bit down. Do you witness the same trend in Germany? I honestly don't know how it is in Germany right now. It's been some time since I last checked for open jobs or freelance opportunities in a certain area. But I might be wrong, but so what I do know is that, of course, it's always been the case that certain frameworks do better in some regions of the world than in others. And I think like the Netherlands have always been a bit better for Vue than React. I might be wrong though, but I'm not sure if it's increasing right now, but definitely possible. Definitely possible, as I mentioned before. And since Ilya mentioned that we forgot Vue.js, I actually talked about Vue.js before. Vue.js is such an amazing framework. I think it's really just a bit bad luck that it's not more popular these days. So if it is increasing in popularity in the Netherlands, that's great news because it's a great framework. It should be a valid alternative to React and Angular. So yeah, sounds great. But I don't know how it's in Germany. You're one of the best developers I've ever seen, Raphael. Thank you so much. Yeah, don't know what to say, but yeah, thank you so much. There are definitely many better developers out there, but I definitely like what I'm doing, and I guess that always helps. And yeah, definitely makes the job more enjoyable. Any updates on Golang? I love Golang. I'm using Golang quite a bit on some projects right now. And I feel like Golang, or Go is the actual name, of course, is a bit weird because Go gets used by many companies, right? You can visit their website, you see a lot of logos there, and yeah, we see a lot of logos on a lot of websites, but Go is actually being used by many companies. I guess, is Docker missing here? I think Docker is written with Go, isn't it? Is Docker written in Go? So I think it is, yeah. And many others too, because Go is really a weird language to some extent. It has a pretty simple syntax, not a lot of keywords, but it has amazing performance. It makes building concurrent applications where code runs in parallel way simpler and easier than some other languages do. But due to its simple syntax, it also lacks some features or some help, you could say, other languages have. So for example, for some reason, I prefer the Rust syntax over the Go syntax. It's just personal preference. I like having static types there. I like having, I mean, there are many things I like about Rust, like their enums and so on, but especially regarding the types. Go also has strict typing, but in Go, you don't have as versatile types as you, for example, do have in Rust or in TypeScript, for example. So if you need a union type in Go, it's really hard to achieve, for example. And I guess it's for reasons like this that maybe it's not as popular in the sense of being liked. But then again, if you take a look at some surveys, it is actually a language many people like. But then again, in every discussion where it's about Rust or Go, it feels like there are way more people that love Rust than Go. So I don't know what to make of that. But long story short, Go is a really amazing language. Really fast, really performant, easy to learn, of course, difficult to master like everything. But yeah, really, really great language, and of course also under active development. I have to admit, I don't even know if there's anything exciting new in the latest new version 1.24. I already might have forgotten about it. But what I like about Go, for example, is that they have a pretty big standard library. Like there's a lot of stuff built in, which is quite the opposite in Rust. Rust is very slim, on purpose, of course. It's a deliberate decision, but there's way more stuff built into Go. And for example, a couple of releases ago, I don't know if it was 1.22, in some past release, I forgot which one it was, but it's also not too important. They added a lot of HTTP routing stuff to the standard library so that you can still bring in some extra HTTP framework if you're building a web server, and you might want to do that. But you can actually build quite amazing applications with Go by just using the standard library. You don't need a lot of dependencies for many problems and programs you might be working on. And I really like that. I like that. So I like the the explicit typing and all the possibilities and the versatility you get from Rust and its type system and some of the features that are built in. I like that, but I like the concurrency, and I like the support for concurrency and how easy that is, and I like the vast amount of stuff that's available in the standard library. So I would love a mixture of the two, but yeah, Go is really amazing. And yeah, I don't know if you mean that with any updates, if you mean like what's new. I don't think there's been anything super important, but I also just might have forgotten about it. But in general, I felt it important to talk about Go because it is an amazing language and everybody should check it out. At least play around with it. If you're doing backend server development stuff, taking a look at Go is not a bad idea. And it's not necessarily instead of JavaScript. It can just be a nice addition, for example. Among Bootstrap, Material, or other frameworks, which one is the best framework to use with Angular, for example? Well, I feel like everybody's using Tailwind these days, right? At least I do. So Tailwind CSS. I obviously, whatever works for you, whatever you like, you should use that. There definitely also are still many projects out there that, for example, use Bootstrap, I imagine. But personally, I'm mostly using Tailwind now, and therefore, yeah, it's a great framework. It is very popular, has its problems, they all do, but it's a great framework. That's probably what I would suggest. Also because AI is great at generating Tailwind CSS classes and code related to that, and that of course also helps. What would be the sensible way to choose programming language generally? Is it following the popular path or other way which popularity is decreasing, like React and Angular? I guess in general, choosing the popular stuff is a good idea. You can go for a niche, and that has its opportunities. Obviously, if you choose some niche language, there will be less jobs, but also less competition. But I would probably go for the popular one. For one, because switching or learning a new language in addition is always easier than if you learn it from scratch, if you don't know anything. So you always have that option, but of course it will take some time. But still, having more opportunities is probably better than hoping to be that one person that wins in a niche. And as I also mentioned before, it's really important that you like what you're working with. It doesn't help you if you're trying to become good at something you don't like just because it makes sense. Because if you don't like it, you won't get good at it, or at least not as good as some other people. And especially in the world of AI, or with AI being a thing, you want to be better than the average. And in my experience, you get good at something you like, not at something you don't like. So I would always go for what you like, and I would probably go for the more popular frameworks and languages. I'm a senior computer science student and performed very poorly in school due to gaming addiction. Is it worth trying to get a job with a bad GPA and resume, or should I try to get my master's? So I guess that's very region specific. For example, in Germany, a master's degree does help a lot, to my knowledge. It definitely helped a lot in business administration, which is what I studied. But in other areas in the world, that might be different. But if you have bad grades and so on, having an extra degree can probably help, because it shows that you learned your lesson and now you're trying everything to fix those mistakes you made in the past. So that alone could be a nice message to send. Would be my thoughts about this. Tailwind is not enabled in your organization. Yeah, sure. That makes sense. I'm a Java developer. I want to learn new things. What can I do? Well, there's plenty of stuff to learn. I guess one of the easiest things to learn if you're a Java developer would be C#, for example, if we are talking about languages, because C# is similar but different. So I started with C# like 15 years ago or something like this. Well, I started way earlier than that, but I I restarted, or I spent a lot of time with C# back then, and I did learn some Java before that, and I had an easy time switching, and I preferred C# over Java, so that might be a thing. But in general, you can learn whatever you want, of course. If you already know a programming language, picking up a second language will always be easier than learning the first one. Golang or Python for machine learning? For machine learning, definitely Python. Because it's the standard language for that. Plenty of frameworks, plenty of examples, libraries, AI help. Yeah, I would go for that. I think Gemini is good for Angular. Other AI sucks. Possible. I actually haven't experimented with a lot of different AI chatbots for that. You feel you're like a journalist because you asked so much. Yeah, but that was the idea behind this stream, Gem. So yeah, in general, thank you all for participating. Actually, I gotta go now. We're already at the end, but this was a lot of fun. I was not sure how much interaction we would have, and we had a lot of questions, a lot of hopefully helpful answers, and I enjoyed this a lot. I will definitely have more streams like this in the future again, more Ask Me Anything streams, more streams where I share my opinion about something, but also streams where we build stuff like I did in the past. And just in case you missed it, I mentioned it at the beginning of the stream. I have a YouTube channel, Maximilian Extended. I upload all recordings of all my streams to this channel, including today's stream, of course. And there, for example, you can watch a past stream where I built a RAG system. And then, of course, lots of other stuff where I build stuff. And I will do more of that in the future. But I hope you liked this today. And thank you all so much for joining. Okay, I got Raphael. These are the last questions I'll answer here. Is it worth start looking outside of the three popular JavaScript frameworks? Like Solid and especially Quick? Probably more for a hobby, I guess. Or for your own projects. That's, of course, absolutely fine. But for jobs, it's probably not super easy to find a lot of jobs there. But then again, if you learn something like Solid, if you spend like a week learning Solid, I guess what you learn there will in general help you become a better developer. That's something I strongly believe in, because diving into new stuff, seeing some different perspectives on certain problems, that can help you with other languages and other frameworks too. So it's never a bad idea to do that if you have the time. If you primarily want to get a job or something like this, it's probably not the framework you will find a job in. So thank you all so much for tuning in, for all your questions. I'd love to see you again in future streams, and you're all amazing. Thanks for being part. Have a great day, night, evening, whatever it is for you. And yeah, hopefully see you in the future. Bye.